My name is Jan. I'm an assistant audience editor for Local here, and I've worked closely on LRM projects for the last 2 years. I'm joined by Sarah Bluestein, who's our deputy editor for Local. I'm going to ask Sarah some frequently asked questions, and if you have any additional ones at any time, please drop them into the chat. We'll either answer them live or Erin Smith, our engagement reporter who's helping run the call, will help us get them answered. As an FYI, I am recording this call and you'll receive a link to it after we're done. So Sarah, to kick it off, could you clarify which newsrooms are eligible to apply to this round of applications?
Sure. So different rounds of LRN have different criteria, but this one is the best because everyone is eligible. If you're in a local newsroom, you can apply.
Great. And when are applications due?
So the applications are due on July 5th at 11:59 p.m. So that's one way to spend your holiday weekend. We do have an internal deadline of June 21st, which is not required, but is an opportunity for people to take advantage of some feedback. So if you have a draft ready before June 21st and want to send it through, someone on our reporting or editing team will read it and send you a few paragraphs of thoughts about how to strengthen it.
Can you talk more about what we're looking for in a project proposal?
Sure. So there's a lot more information on our how to apply page, which you should have all received when you got notification about this webinar, but Erin can Erin just put the link in the chat so you can find it there, but I'll run through it anyway. The first thing is, we're asking ourselves, is this an accountability project? Do you know, like, what's the harm here? Who's responsible? And what needs to be changed? So if you can answer those questions, you're well on your way to developing a proposal that could work. The second thing that we're looking at is local impact. Will this make a difference to your community? Why should it be told there? And why should it be told now? What we're not really looking for is a story that's happening everywhere that is also happening in your community. So as an example, the first year that the LRN launched, there was a lot of national coverage of opioid addiction. And I wasn't in this job at the time, but I understand that there were 18 proposals about opioid abuse in one form or another. And they were important stories, but not unique to the community that they were coming from. And so, we didn't sign up to work on any of those. I would say a third thing that we need is a clear hypothesis. It's tempting to say, I want to do my reporting and find out whether something's happening, but we want to know that that something is in fact happening and you have an idea about why. The fourth thing I would say is having a reporting plan. How are you going to do this? What kinds of sources do you have? You don't need to tell us who your sources are or what your sources are, but is this a story about documents? Is this a story about public records requests? Is it a story where the human beings are at the heart of it? Is it a combination of both? Is it a data story? How would you approach the story is going to give us a clue to, what it would look like if we were to team up together. And the last thing that we want to hear about is a little bit about your newsroom, why you're best positioned to tell this story, and what you think you could get out of a collaboration with us. Like how would this make the project better if you were going to work together with ProPublica?
Timothy Pratt asked a question, are freelancers eligible for this funding?
So the answer is yes, but the freelancer needs to be working with a newsroom. And if you look on our materials, the how to apply page and screen door, we ask that the application come from a newsroom on behalf of the reporter. And that's because this is really considered a partnership undertaking between a local newsroom and us. So you may have the big idea, you may have done a lot of pre-reporting, but you do need a newsroom to sign on and to submit on your behalf.
And Sian Cobb asked, do you accept applications from a newspaper in the US Virgin Islands? We are a US territory that is part of the US.
Yeah, I got a Slack message just before this saying that we were checking on that. Someone else had asked that, or maybe you asked that in another form. So we will get back to you about it.
Yes, and if you want to send your question to local.reporting@propublica.org, we will get back to you. Another question we often get is, what should winning reporters expect if they get selected?
Sure. So, I mean, first on the nuts and bolts, we pay the salary of the reporter up to $75,000 for the 1 year starting September 1st through the end of August of next year. Plus, there is an allowance for benefits if you're receiving them. You will be assigned an editor, on the LRN team, on the ProPublica staff, who will work collaboratively with you, with your editor in your newsroom, and also, work with other members of our teams, whether it's the audience team that Jan is on, or the engagement team, which Erin is on, or the data team, or, other assets that we have that can bring your project forward. What I would say is the goal here is to give each project the individual resources that it needs to be the best project that it can be. And that will take a lot of different forms. But, broadly speaking, you're going to meet once a week with an editor, at least once a week with an editor on our staff to plan out the reporting. It's the project arc. We will help you with public records requests, anything you need. The editor is there to be going to bat for you and for bringing resources that you need.
Just to clarify another question that we often get, it is the editor who has to submit the application, right?
Yes, so the editor has to submit it, but we understand that you're working together with that editor. It's not like we care who actually wrote it. Like anybody can write it. It just has to come from the newsroom, because again, this is considered a partnership between the LRN, ProPublica's LRN project, and that newsroom. So, what the worst thing that would happen would be, for a reporter to submit and then their newsroom would say, like, no, we don't actually want this to happen, or whatever. So we need to know that that backing is there. Just one other thing about that too is, we really anticipate this as a 12-month commitment from the reporter and the newsroom for, the whole year of the LRN. We know that things will come up, but just in terms of what to expect for the LRN year, our hope is that this opportunity clears the way for reporters to put their energies into this project for the full year and to not be doing other reporting, and to really focus for the most impactful reporting they can do.
And how much pre-reporting do you look for in the applications?
Yeah, that's like my least favorite question, Jan, because it's so it's so complicated. I mean, nobody is going to be able to do a year's worth of reporting before they do their application. On the other hand, you really do need to know enough about your subject to know that what you want to cover is in fact happening. So, for instance, if a source says to you, this terrible thing is happening, you probably need more than one person telling you. You need an idea of, is this true? And how will I pursue it? And what are the sources that are available to me? It doesn't mean you call every source or request every record. It just means that they exist. So then when you're trying to create a pathway forward and talk about it with us as we think about it, there aren't surprises as you go into the project. I mean, I know that it seems like a year is a long time to do reporting on a single subject, but actually it flies. And if you go into it and then it turns out that your hypothesis was completely wrong, like you're starting, you're set back pretty far. So I would say you want to do enough pre-reporting that you know what the story is, and how you would go about getting it if you possibly can. That doesn't mean there won't be surprises along the way. There will be. But you want to feel pretty stable when you submit.
I'm going to switch over to the chat real fast. Arno Patrum asked, I applied to the Abrams Fellowship but didn't get in. The EIC of the newspaper I want to work with is slammed because of the municipal elections. Can I send the reporting proposal I sent for the Abrams Fellowship and get feedback on this already? Or do I need to send it all formally through the application portal before June 21st with the EIC?
Oh, sorry for any confusion. No, if the proposals, the draft proposals that you'll get feedback on can just come by email to that same email address, local.reporting@propublica.com. And then we'll just email back to you with our thoughts. And so you don't need the editor involved at this stage. I mean, I would say it would be nice to know if the editor is in favor of your doing that. That way, just internally, that would be a good thing to know. But no, you can just send it through.
Great. And can 2 reporters work on the project, or must it only be 1? This is from CM Cobb.
So we can only pay for the salary of 1 reporter, and 1 reporter will be announced as the LRN member. That said, there are all kinds of permutations. So the newsroom might want 2 people working on it and have another staff reporter. So what the proposal would put forth is 1 person's name, but in the narrative part of it, you could easily say, we intend to include another reporter on this project for the duration of the year. There have been all kinds of different arrangements, including like freelancers working with the LRN reporter. Sometimes a ProPublica staffer will end up reporting with the LRN reporter. There's a lot of flexibility in how the work gets done, but the thing that's not flexible is that we only choose 1 reporter to be the announced kind of winner, and we only pay the $75,000 for the 1 person. And that money goes to the newsroom as like a reimbursement for the salary.
And this is from Timothy. Also, Sion, I think I might have been pronouncing your name incorrectly. If it's Sean, I'm very, very sorry. But another question from the chat group. If you're a freelancer and locate an outlet to work with, how are all the details, salary, et cetera, determined?
So the cap of 75 is as high as we can go, but on the application form, which you all have the link to, it says, what is your current salary? So basically the freelancer would need to work out an arrangement with the newsroom. One option would be, and this sometimes happens, that they bring you on staff for the year, they pay your benefits, and then we pay the 23% benefits amount plus the salary, whatever they agree to pay you, directly to the newsroom. If they want to keep you on as a contract basis, then we would pay the salary as listed on the application up to 75,000, but the benefits would go to the freelance reporter. So it kind of depends on the situation, and it just means like talking to that newsroom about what works best for them.
For any editors on the call, they might be wondering if the reporters will keep working for them. Can you speak a little about that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, this is a question that comes up a lot because, partnerships are a little bit complicated. The editor is still the editor, right? It's still your newsroom. This material is not only showing up on ProPublica's website. It is a true partnership. We will be talking as much as the editor wants to be involved, and it ranges quite a bit. Some editors are on every call every week and really in the in the weeds of the reporting. Some come to meetings once a month. We always are going to need the editors sign off on the stories, and they're bringing their specific knowledge of their communities and their audiences and their needs to the project. What we bring are some of the skills that, ProPublica is good at. And so, we really do think of it as a collaboration and work together. But yes, I mean, the short answer is the editor is still, it has the same relationship. The reporter is not on loan to us for a year. We're really getting into this because we know that we can work together and make a bigger and better project together than we could separately.
Going back to project proposal, this is a question from Uliana in the chat. Does it have to be one reporting idea? Can we submit more than one?
It doesn't have to be, but only one project will be selected. We're going to go into the project year knowing what it's going to be about. It sounds to me like a lot of work to develop too, but if you actually last year, I think the last round, I think one newsroom did submit 2 different proposals with 2 different reporters. But only one is going to win. So I mean, one thing you could do in that situation is email to the local.reporting email address and float those ideas and see if you can get some feedback before the deadline. So that might save a little bit of work on the front end.
Another question from Uliana, which I think you kind of answered, and we can also give you an answer directly, Uliana. But what if for one of the ideas I have the data, but did the public record search, but do not have sources yet?
So the question is, sorry.
She has the idea and did the public record search, but she doesn't have sources yet.
You mean like human sources? I mean, everybody who applies is going to have some work behind them and some work ahead of them. I think the proposal is to just put together, the best of what what you want to investigate and how you'll go about doing it. Of course, like over the course of the year, you will be getting new sources and the story will change and it will take all these kinds of directions. I think it's very good to be transparent about what you know, what you don't know. And if you don't have human sources yet, it's fine to say, I don't have the human sources yet, but I would go about getting them. Like that's the part where we need to see that there is actually a pathway forward. Like if there's no one who can talk to you about this, that's going to be hard to do. So knowing that you have something in mind to get you from here to there is really, really helpful.
Another question in the chat, approximately how many applications for this are received annually? Is this opportunity more competitive than the Abrams Fellowship?
I don't actually know about the Abrams Fellowship. I know that a lot of people did apply, but I can't speak to that comparatively. I joined the LRN project in January, so this is the second time I'm going through it, but I understand from my boss that we typically accept 5 to 10% of applications. So that's sort of a ballpark of what you can expect. And I mean, I should say there are always more applications that we want to take on than we can. So, it's definitely, there definitely is a lot of need out there.
And this goes back to salary compensation. Uliana asked, I've spent the past year in grad school and my salary was obviously 0. What is my compensation range?
So wait, so is this person a freelancer or?
Uliana, if you're still on this webinar, could you let us know if you're still a freelancer? If not, you're more than welcome to also email us at local.reporting and we can give you specific advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that, the reporters are going to be working in partnership with a local newsroom. And I think that's something that the person would talk to the newsroom about who, what is the local standard? Like, I can't possibly know, like, it would be hard for us to say, like, there is a slot on the application and the newsroom would have to work with you to come up with a compensation amount. So I would say talk to the newsroom that you're partnering on this with, if you're familiar, and if you are on staff, obviously you know what your salary is.
A question from Ingrid. By any chance, do you have relationships with desirous news organizations in different parts of the country? I'm a freelancer and approached a news organization about a month ago. I know the person there a little. The story proposal is a good match for the material. I have bothered her a couple of times since then and still heard nothing about it. I am in Southern California. Any counsel?
I mean, it's obviously a big country and we know some people and we don't know other people. If you want to send the proposal to us with, a summary or whatever, and, and say, like, I'm having trouble finding a partner for this, we can, put our heads together about whether there's anybody in your region that we could help with. Between all of us, we do know a lot of people, but we don't know everyone. So all I can say is probably just send an email with a draft proposal. And, if we can help make a match, we will.
Pablo asked, when will the final decision on the chosen proposal be announced? I work for the NPR member station in Alaska and I'm brainstorming on an infrastructure story related to the state's ferry system. I'll be traveling on the ferry between Washington, Alaska and mid-July on a pre-planned trip and plan to bring my car here. Long story short, I'm thinking about making a story out of my trip. Would that be too soon before a decision is made for the proposal?
So,
In
yeah,
mid-July, yeah.
yeah. That would be too soon. I mean, the applications are due July 5th. And, I would think it typically takes 4 or 5 weeks for us to go through all the applications. We do a very thorough process of reading them all, of narrowing them. We do interviews with all the finalists. So I don't think there's any way by mid-July that we would have notifications. It would be sometime in August that you would hear.
A question from Michelle. Does the type of publication matter? For example, my story relates to a scandal at the VA hospital embezzled funds. Are military news outlets okay?
Yeah, I think most outlets are okay. We have a whole cohort of radio outlets now that we're working with. We are, there are small nonprofits with one person working there. There is just a huge range of, and then, there's larger newspapers. One of our partners right now is the Philadelphia Inquirer. So I would say, we don't try to limit what kinds of publications are involved.
Can the pitch propose stories that are in different beats? Example, police accountability and prison stories, or do they have to be of all one beat?
So the point here is to go deep on an accountability story. It's a little hard to tell from the question, Jan, like if the beats are overlapping because there's something going wrong there and it is, partly whatever, a prison issue and partly a policing issue, obviously formulating a story that's complex is not a problem, but we're not looking for someone who wants to do a little reporting on this subject and then a little reporting on that subject. The idea is to spend the year going deeper on one accountability story. I shouldn't say that. One accountability topic that may turn into multiple stories with multiple angles. And there could be different beats as the question asked that relate to that subject. So I'm trying to sort of explain that, they should be connected in some way.
Would ProPublica help with legal appeals for denied or delayed public records requests?
Yeah, so we do have a legal team that does libel review for all of our stories. We do help with those appeals if we need to. We can't do it for all of the projects all of the time. We're not bringing lawsuits for every project. And, one thing to be aware of there is that when records requests are not fulfilled quickly and you have 1 year to do the project, it's, often good to have a backup plan, because otherwise you're in a situation where you're waiting 6 months and half of your year has passed. But more specifically to the question, we do ask newsrooms that have legal supports to use those first, because we don't have a massive team. But, if you do need our help, we will kick in, and we are also always happy to, consult on what's the best course of action here. Is it to write a legal letter? Is it to, do something else? Is it to have a getting to know you phone call with the public records officer? It's, we try to strategize, because our goal here is, to get the stuff moving quickly enough that you can use it for your reporting.
And how many times a year do you accept applicants for this opportunity?
So typically it's 2 to 3 times a year. I don't have the specific date yet for the next round after the July 5th deadline, but I anticipate it will be in the coming half year.
Do freelancers have to apply with an outlet already committed?
Yes. So we can't do this just with a freelancer, without a publication partner. So you do need to find an outlet time now to pitch. And, for freelancers who are interested in this is really value added for a newsroom. If you bring them a proposal and say, I want to do this, if I want to apply, are you interested in this proposal? Will you back it? They're potentially looking at having a whole new staffer for the year. So I think that there's a lot to be said for giving it a go.
Andrea asked a question about the scope of the project proposal, but what kind of stories does ProPublica take? Do they take stories from Africa?
So a number of things. First of all, the LRN is only open to partnerships with US media at this point. So, it's a little bit hard to know how stories based in Africa would relate to that. But, it's possible that, a business in one state or community has an arm in Africa that relates in some way. Like I can't say specifically. I would say the best thing you can do now that the LRN has been around for a number of years is just to go to our LRN page, our project page, which you can find on the ProPublica website, and just peruse through the different kinds of projects. What you'll see is that there are projects there that have 1 or 2 stories for the whole year. Sometimes that's what they produce, is like one big story and a couple of follow-ups. Sometimes they come out earlier and really get into a rhythm, and there could be many, many more stories. There's a lot of variation with the LRN. So just in terms of the scope, it's hard to tell. But I do think in proposals, it's useful if like, well, here's my topic area, and I have this idea to go this way and this idea to go that way. And we could have like one investigative profile and one data story and one, like just to break it down into the different ideas or the different elements or the different accountability angles. It's useful to think about what you want to produce in the proposal period.
We talked a bit about the project proposal. Arno wants to know, what are you looking for in a reporter's personal statement?
Well, we want to get to know you. It's going to be a relationship for a year. We want to know how you work, what you're good at, why you care about this, what's your passion, maybe something about your relationship with the material, like how did you come upon this? What does it tell? What does knowing you tell us about how this project would work? What kinds of sources you like to work with? If you're proposing a data and you have like this huge long history of working with data, like that's good to know. It's really about just understanding who you are, your relationship with this project, and what it means to you.
A question from Tim: are investigative pieces on something that happened in the past a better fit than an unfolding story? Example, something we know will happen in upcoming year will have a major impact on community and require newsroom focus.
So that is a tricky question. I think, our main metric for what we're trying to do with these stories is bring new facts to light that could make change. So with the historical pieces, it could be that there is like some historical injustice that has not, has still not been righted. So are there new facts? Everybody was talking about the Tulsa riots this year. Are there new facts that we could bring forward that could lead to some kind of impact, right? Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't. That's a little bit difficult to say. With an unfolding story, that's a little bit harder to know. I mean, it depends on how quickly it's moving. Like if there's a bill that's being debated or a court case and it's going to end or be voted on before the LRN year is up, that's a kind of scary situation because you're basically racing the news events to try to bring forward the new facts before whatever is decided. On the other hand, like if there is an unfolding news story, like there's this big debate over some kind of regulation that's going to take a couple of years, and the LRN project is going to look at, for instance, facts related to how that regulation should be written, well, that's good timing for it. What you don't want to do is have events overtake your reporting, because then you're kind of stuck.
A question from Aurora: can a development manager submit on behalf of a nonprofit newsroom?
Yeah, we have had, as opposed to an editor, I guess that is. I think it's just someone who is representing the nonprofit as an entity representing the newsroom in addition to the reporter. So, different people have sent in the applications, but, we will do interviews with the submitter as well as the reporter if you are a finalist. And so that person should be able to speak to some portion of the project as well. But, we understand there are some very newsrooms out there and people are wearing lots of different hats. So, whatever makes sense for you to represent the newsroom perspective and also the reporter perspective.
This is a question from our Q&A window. Should the reporter be an expert on the topic, meaning they have had significant experience with reporting on this topic?
In our experience, a lot of good investigative work comes out of prior reporting. It's just how what's out there and what your sources are telling you, but it's definitely not a prerequisite. And of course, like reporting always takes us in new directions that we've never seen before. What I would say, and this is something that I would really urge people to think about as they write their proposals, is know what has been written before. That might be in previous media coverage. It might be in a government, accountability report. It might be in a nonprofit, like major investigation into, an environmental issue or whatever. But you don't need to have reported and published on the subject, but you definitely need to know the landscape that you're trying to go into, what has been written and how are you advancing it. I think, some really good Googling is going to get you far, just in terms of defining what it is that you, bring to this project to advance it beyond what's already known.
A question from Candace: how many levels of the application process are there? What is involved at each level?
So the way that the process works is we will get all the applications by July 5th. and we will sort through them. For some portion of those, and it's not an exact science, we may come back to you with some questions like, this is a really intriguing idea, but can you tell us more about what's known about it already and how you would advance it, like what I was just saying, or, or other questions like, this is very intriguing, but, we're not sure, like, do you know where the sources are for this or whatever? So if we have questions that go to the heart of the doability of the story, or questions about, the facts in the story, like, is this what we think it is? Are we understanding this right? We'll come back to you and ask you, just send an email with a bunch of questions that you can, clarify. At a certain point, we will narrow it down enough that there will be a set of interviews that will be done with the reporter and with the editor or whoever the submitter. And after that, that's it. So the application is the main thing that's going to happen. There will be this more informal opportunity for us to ask some questions and clarify things, and then there will be the interview process.
Another question from the Q&A. Do applicants need to plan to be working full-time as a journalist for the year? Or would it be okay to plan to work, say, 20 hours a week on the story while working 20 hours a week at another job / on other work?
Yeah, so the purpose of this is to put someone in it full-time. We really have found in our experience that you need that full-time effort in order to make sure that you can go deep into this reporting and pull off, a number of stories on it and really understand it and really formulate it in a way. So we don't accept part-time applications.
Michelle asked, you mentioned that the primary story can have or should have several sub-stories which focus on a particular perspective. Is there a rule of thumb to consider, say like no more than 3 or 5 sub-stories? I think this kind of ties in with our other frequently asked questions, basically how many stories is a reporter expected to write each year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not a quota here. Like I said, there's some that are very few and some that are many. I would say there's sort of a sweet spot in the like 3 to 6 range, but it's very tricky to answer this question because what you want to do is come out with like a story that gets the ball rolling. But once you do that, it's very hard to know like what kind of follow-up is there going to be? Is there going to be impact follow-up, or is there going to be, individual stories about who's at the heart of the reporting you're doing? So I would say there's a ballpark there, but it's very variable what happens after the first piece comes out.
Could this lead to opportunities to work with ProPublica in the future for freelancers?
There are people who have gone through the LRN. I'm thinking of one in particular who have then become staff reporters with us. I mean, we are obviously always looking to develop relationships and to hold on to these relationships after the LRN year ends. So, more broadly, we don't use, outside of the local reporting network, we don't use freelancers that often because it's a staff-based model at ProPublica, but we do sometimes, and we also do just to keep up the relationships after this year and, figure out like how we can work together. So I wouldn't say there's a sort of formal official pathway post LRN, but we definitely have gotten to know you and your strengths and, want to stay in touch.
This is a question from Jarvis. If I have a reporter on staff who's already receiving a salary, is the expectation that I use that reporter's salary to replace what she's doing for that year?
That's the individual newsroom manager's decision. I would say a lot of newsrooms do that, right? Because you're saying, I mean, if that reporter was doing investigative work before and you have a winning proposal and you're getting money for their salary and that's all the investigations that you want for the year, that's fine. You don't have to spend the money and bring someone else on. But if that reporter was doing, say, some investigations and also some daily news reporting or weekly news reporting or other tasks, it's definitely the expectation that they would be relieved of those other tasks and only focusing on this project for the year. So in that case, you wouldn't have to use all the money, but maybe you want to use some of it to bring on someone who can help with some of those things. So it's really a decision, but many newsroom managers do kind of replace that person with someone else who can take on some of their jobs.
This is a question from Lizzie. Can a freelancer journalist with less than 5 years experience be qualified in this application?
Yeah, we have people with a huge range. I mean, we've had LRN folks who are, decades veterans and MacArthur grant recipients, and we've had people who were, very new to the field. We're really looking for that sweet spot of, a sharp story idea and a pathway forward. So, I think honestly, like anybody is eligible.
Is this project for all countries?
It's only open to newsrooms in the United States right now. So so if you're a freelancer and you're looking for a partner newsroom, it has to be a newsroom here.
I'm just going to pivot back to some of our frequently asked questions. What if the story we pitch ends up not working out, i.e. we drill a dry hole?
Mm-hmm. So so that's a question about a proposal that is accepted by us and we're working on it. I mean, our experience is that doesn't happen that often because the proposals have already been reported before they're accepted and you're on a pathway to looking at something that's a problem that exists. That said, nothing ever goes exactly as planned in journalism, and that's completely known by us, known by you all, and it's to be expected, and it's part of the stress and it's part of the fun. But like, our editors are working with LRN reporters every week to figure out which direction to go in next. So I would say it's unlikely that the hole will be dry entirely, but if it is, you will work with your newsroom editor and with the ProPublica editor to come up with a new direction. I mean, the commitment is for the year, it's not for the project. So, the goal would be to still come up with something new that you could do within that calendar year.
For all the editors on the call, what if the editor has a project idea, but they don't have a reporter yet?
So you can submit a proposal without having a reporter exactly attached, but we would need to know who the reporter is within a few days of the deadline. So like if you've had this like dream project for all these years and you just want to submit it, that's fine. But I would say if the deadline is July 5th, by July 10th or something, we would need to know who the reporter is that you're attaching to it. There's a little bit of wiggle room there, but we can't make a decision about a project without knowing who the reporter is, because that's the person we're going to talk to the most. Like, we're going to be working with them, so we need to know, how do they write, how do they report, who are they, how do we get along? It's a close relationship. So I would say it's better if at the front end, but definitely within a few days we'll need an answer.
I believe we have answered all of the questions that our attendees have asked. Thank you guys so much for attending. We hope that this was useful. We've dropped in a lot of links into the chat, so if you have any questions, feel free to access those links, and chances are we've answered them. And as always, you can email us at local.reporting@propublica.org. Sarah and I will stay on for about 3 more minutes in case people want to continue to ask some questions. And then at 3:50, we will call it.
So it looks like Arno is asking in the chat, can the same pair of freelancer editors send 2 different applications to 2? I guess so. It seems, I mean, you know, it seems fine to me if you have 2 that are under development, there's no problem. We're going to read them all and make, assessments about what's there. But thank you, Jan and Erin, so much for helping answer all these questions and ask all these questions. And yeah, we will just hang out here for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then just so you know, local.reporting goes straight into my inbox. So it's not just going into like never land. I see it.
Oh, and also shout out to Jim, who really helped with the tech end of this. He is also on this call, so thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Erin, Andrea just asked about being informed about when Stories from the Global South are open for applications. The one thing we haven't said is people can sign up on our newsletters page for the LRN newsletters. And then as soon as you'll get an email from us. So like when new rounds open up, or if there's changes to the program or whatever, that, everybody will know right there. So.
It is 3:50. There are no more questions, so I think we can call it. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we hope you apply. Bye, guys.
Bye.